to just begin and first of all thank Paula. And I know that there's someone else I have to thank, because really someone suggested a presenter, and Paula was the contact to get a hold of the other presenter. And I'm like, wait, Paula, you have a story that I think people would really appreciate listening to. So Paula Pedene was one of the first whistleblowers at the Phoenix VA, the Phoenix Veterans Affairs healthcare system. And if you aren't a local, you probably heard this. This was obviously national news, but I'll just share a little bit about the story. In 2010, with Dr. Sam Foote, they were able to expose funds mismanagement in a hostile work environment. The VA Office of the Inspector General at that time sustained their allegations. New leadership arrived and they retaliated against Paula, removing her from her role as a VA public affairs officer, where she had performed admirably for 23 years. They stripped her of her title, her office, her email and phone, and banished her to the basement library. And while she was in the library, she saw the VA wait time scandal unfolding and was able to convince Dr. Sam Foote and other trusted colleagues to once again expose the corruption. The disclosures were so horrifying, they forced the resignation of the VA secretary, the undersecretary for health, and others. After the scandal became national news, she was able to win her whistleblower case with thanks to the Office of Special Counsel and her legal team who negotiated on her behalf. So today, she titles her speech, "Taking a Stand for Ethics," in which she'll walk us through the VA wait time scandal that she helped to expose and share the ethical values of her Public Relations Association and how they helped her navigate through this ordeal. So I'm going to share the mic and the floor with Paula. And thank you so much, of course, for what you do and as well for your time today.
Oh, no problems, Levi. It's really my honor to be here. And I have my presentation up, so I just want to see if we can pull this full screen. Let me do this and see if that helps. Presentation mode, hopefully. There we go. There we go. How's that, better?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, great. Okay, and thank you so much for having me. It is a very sad topic that I have to report on, but I often tell people that God had me where he needed me to be, even though I faced a lot of reprisal, but that it leads to this story. So what I want to talk about to you today is having ethical values even when it's hard, because this was definitely a challenge for me. So the title of my presentation is Ethical Values in the Face of Whistleblower Reprisal. So first of all, let's start with who is a whistleblower. A whistleblower is someone who exposes secretive information or activity that is deemed illegal, unethical, or immoral, and it's not correct within a private or a public organization. Sometimes when you're working with people, you ask them, you suggest that they do the most right thing, they choose not to do so, and it leads to something like what happened to me. So I was honored to work with the Phoenix VA for many years. I got there in 1994, and we had what we called a top performing hospital. We were actually recognized as one of the best hospitals in the veterans healthcare system. We had a wonderful boss who helped create a culture of excellence, and we had values that people could relate to. And we were not only embracing those values, we were living up to them, and we were actually what we called a system of healthcare for heroes. That's how good we had done with so the Phoenix VA PR program was similar. That was what I was in charge of. We had a top public relations program in VA. I had a seat at the leadership table. I was providing advice and counsel. I had staff, I had budget. I had a gazillion awards, including 3 national honors. And I was the coordinator of what was then called the VA Veterans Day Parade. Then came my first VA whistleblower experience. As I mentioned, I had been there since 1994. The phenomenal leader that we had retired. I think it was in 2007. We had some interim leadership come in, and in 2009 we had a boss who was there who put themselves in front of our mission. I, at that time, collaborated with Dr. Sam Foote, and we identified what was called funds mismanagement, as well as a hostile work environment. They had ruined the culture of excellence that we had established, and we worked collaboratively with the Office of the Inspector General at the time, and we were able to stop what they were doing. They were then required to rebuild my PR program because I was kind of in the way. They wanted somebody that would just roll over and play dead, and that was not me, and that was not Sam. So they were actually forced to retire, both the director and the associate director. We were able to do this quietly in 2009. We had an interim director come in, and they were supposed to start restoring some of what had been taken down under that bad leader team. And we were in the middle of sitting down and hashing out agreements and to rebuild my program to get us back on track. And the next day, after we had come up with all those agreements, they said, "Oh no, Paula, we're not going to be able to do what we said." And I said, "Okay, you guys, I've been, working with you on this for 17 months now. We're not getting where we need to be. So I'm going to file an EEO, an Equal Employment Opportunity case." So I filed my equal opportunity case in November, December. And then in December, they tell me, "Well, Paula, we have new leadership coming. They're going to be here in February. So you have to decide if you want to start your new relationship with the director with an EEO hanging over their head." So I did what I thought was the most right thing, and I dropped my EEO case thinking that I could then work with the new leadership. But little did I know that the storm was brewing. The new director arrived in February of 2012. She hired the number 2 guy who was not working with me on the restoration as her associate director. And then we saw something that we had seen prior, which was staff departures. And then in December of 2012, we had 100 nurses retire in droves. In my entire 24 years there at the Phoenix VA, that was the first time I had ever seen that happen. So I knew that we were in for more of a storm than a help. In August of 2012 through December, through comedy of errors, they find out that I was still in touch with Dr. Foote. And when they found that out, they started excluding me from the leadership team, from leadership meetings, through all kinds of things. And that's when I started protecting myself. And then in December of 2012 is when they took action against me, as Levi had mentioned in my introduction. They removed me as a public affairs officer over an alleged misconduct. They took away my email. They took away my phone. They actually removed me from my office. They had HR escort me off the property as if I was a criminal, and they reassigned me to the education department where the library was, and they conducted what they said was going to be a 30-day investigation for these alleged misconduct. So what we talk about in the Public Relations Society of America is that one must have foundational values, and part of those foundational values our respect for the individual. There is no one inherently more important than another person. So I will tell you that the way that they handled me that day did not live up to this value of respect for the individual. Their goal at the time was to humiliate me and to make me quit. We also uphold other ethical values in our society, and those include ethical values and principles. The values are advocacy, honesty, expertise, independence, loyalty, and fairness. And the principles are making sure that you have no conflicts of interest, that you're enhancing the profession, that you have a free flow of information, that there's disclosure of information when it's, needed or unethical, and that you safeguard those confidences. So what happened was I went from being a leader in the realm of the hospital to someone who had vanished. I was under a 30-day investigation that went for 60 days and then 90 days without any information. When people called upstairs to ask for me, they were informed that I no longer worked there. But every day I did the best job I could when I was banished to the basement library, and I provided service to our nation's veterans. I also had to hire a legal team, including a criminal attorney, because I figured out they were coming out after me criminally. And I tried to cope with what was happening. And I will tell you that that's when I started beginning a battle with depression. 30 to 60 to 90 days. By this point in time, the Arizona Republic is saying, wait a second, where's Paula Pedene? We hear from her every week. She's active on social media. She interacts with us. We're not hearing anything from her. So they call over to the hospital and they say, we'd like to talk to Paula. And that's when the investigative reporter gets a runaround. So he finds out through his sources that I have hired a criminal attorney, that the VA has removed me from my job. And he wrote a story on me that I could not comment to because I was under investigation, but my lawyers could comment on. And that's when people started seeing what was happening to me. I appeared on the front page of the March 29th Arizona Republic. And that's when people figured out I was in the library. So they started coming to the library. They'd hold up the paper and they'd go like this. And they put the thumbs up and they'd ask for copies of the article. And I was in the library, so I could give them copies of the article. And that's when people started beginning to understand. Now, can you hear this? Because the video is rolling. So
we don't hear it, but if you go to on the top, like at the drop down, you should be able to select to optimize screen for video. Do you see that? Like at the floating bar?
Share computer sound.
The volunteer organizers say the VA is taking away the one person who makes the parade run.
Reminds me of when I came home from Vietnam.
David Lucier remembers how veterans were shunned when he returned home from Vietnam in the 1970s. Now he sees a return to those days.
I think it's a pervasive attitude, a substantial shift in pervasive attitude towards veterans.
The latest battle for Arizona veterans, their annual parade is being taken away. Phoenix's annual Veterans Day parade in November, the fourth largest in the country, is in danger of being canceled this year after Veterans Affairs official in Phoenix ended their sponsorship.
It's like starting from scratch. So it is highly doubtful we would be able to pull off a parade this year.
Catherine Brooks leads the volunteer group that raises money for the parade. She says the loss of VA sponsorship meant the loss of the woman who's led the parade's volunteer committee for 15 years. Former VA spokeswoman Paula Pedene.
We have 12 musical groups.
It's a big loss, and we are not permitted to talk with Paula about anything.
The Phoenix VA demoted Pedene last December amidst an investigation of an alleged security breach.
we'd have to bring Paula back in the loop. We can't take Paula out of the loop and have a successful parade this year.
The VA really has to sit down with the veterans community and iron this thing out.
Now, Paula Pedene is not allowed to speak to the media. I just spoke to her boss, Phoenix VA Director Sharon Hellman, who indicated that Pedene will not be coming back to the parade, and hundreds of VA employees who volunteered on VA time, meaning taxpayer time, will now have to work the parade on their personal time. Hellman says the VA's priority has to be health care.
Any support that we have given the parade and other community events is something that I look at every year to ensure that our taxpayer dollars are spent wisely. And so that is one of the reasons why we want to make sure this is not a competing priority for any of the staff, and that they know that health care access for veterans is #1.
Catherine Brooks urges vets and others to write or call your members of Congress, Arizona senators, or the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to find a way to make the parade happen this year. Bram Resnick.
So that's kind of the interesting story that happened with the parade. I was, banished to the basement. They couldn't talk to me. You heard him say, the VA told them no one could talk to me, which was a violation of the First Amendment right. So we were just fighting a legal case. We decided to leave VA, let them hang themselves, and we did what was right for all concerned. I went underground. I volunteered my time then as a parade coordinator. I worked with Catherine Brooks. She was able to go out there during the day, get sponsors. We had Rick Romley, who was a former Maricopa County attorney. He was helping us as well. We flipped the route. We usually started the parade at the VA hospital because it was a phenomenal event for them. So we ended up starting at the North Phoenix Baptist Church. And I will tell you that here we were, 11 months later when the parade took place. And I was able to do morning live shots that morning. So people knew that I wasn't giving up. And the parade marched on November 11th at 11 a.m. But it was 11 months into a 30-day investigation. After that, I went back to my little darkness in the library where I was checking books in and out. I was making copies. I was faxing documents. I was monitoring the use of the veterans on the computers. And fortunately for me, my boss allowed me to watch hearings, congressional hearings, and I was able to continue to document concerns of what we had. But that whole time, I was secretly reporting what VA leadership was unethically doing. I began the dialogue with Sam Foote, and it unfortunately for us, everything fell on deaf ears. So we started working with patients about their appointment timeframes. We started sharing insider information with members of Congress because remember, we had tried VA internally now for 11 months and it was going nowhere. So we gave them the opportunity to help us and they didn't. And then what ended up happening was this story which hit CNN and the Arizona Republic about the deadly wait for delays. And that was when VA finally started listening. Now, this story is a little long, Levi, so I'm afraid to share it because I don't know how much time we have left. How much time do we have?
Well, first of all, how long do you think it will be?
This story is about 5 or 6 minutes.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to go.
Tonight at 360 exclusive, the most disturbing example yet in our ongoing investigation of U.S. military veterans dying while they wait for medical care at VA hospitals. As a result of our previous reporting, Congress launched an investigation. Now we've uncovered just how far one VA hospital went to hide its outrageously long wait times. 40 veterans died while waiting for care at this hospital. Now, that would be shocking enough. Keeping them honest, though, there is more. A doctor who's left the hospital says that managers were actually keeping 2 waiting lists a sham list that made the hospital look like a model of efficiency, and a secret list that showed the deadly reality. Here's senior investigative correspondent Drew Griffin.
It was a plan by top management at this veterans hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, to hide as many as 1,600 veterans, waiting many months just to get a doctor's appointment. CNN has learned at least 40 veterans left waiting for care. Many who are on that secret list are now dead. And what's worse, according to multiple sources, the management's plan included shredding the evidence to hide the fact there was a waiting list at all.
We've heard as many as 40 veterans here in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, could have died waiting for care.
That's correct. The number's actually higher.
Dr. Sam Foote just retired after spending 24 years with the VA health system here in Arizona. The veteran doctor says the hospital did have a list that showed the VA was providing timely appointments within 14 days, but that was a sham.
The only record that you have ever been there requesting care was on that secret list. And they wouldn't take you off that secret list until you had an appointment time that was less than 14 days. So it would give the appearance that they were improving greatly the waiting times, when in reality it had been 6, 9, in some cases 21 months.
In the case of a 71-year-old U.S. Navy veteran named Thomas Breen, the wait ended much sooner.
He started bleeding in his urine. So it was like, listen, we got to get you to the doctor. We got to get you to the doctor.
Teddy Barnes Breen says his Brooklyn-raised father, Thomas, so proud of his military service, would go nowhere but the VA for treatment. And on September 28th, with blood in his urine and a history of cancer, Teddy and his wife rushed him to the Phoenix VA emergency room, where he was examined and sent home to wait.
All they wrote on his chart was must have primary doctor in 1 week. Urgent. And they sent him home.
This is a copy of Mr. Barnes' VA medical chart, stating clearly on the top urgency, that he should be seen by a primary care physician or urologist within a week.
Did anybody call?
No.
You called?
Me and Pop called.
Numerous times.
Numerous times.
And you never got an appointment?
No, I got a response. Would you like to hear the response? Well, you know, we have other patients that are critical as well. It's a 7-month waiting list, and you're going to have patience. Lawyers
Sally kept calling day after day from late September through October through November. Then she no longer had a reason to call. Thomas Breen died on November 30th, 2013. The bleeding was from inoperable stage 4 bladder cancer.
They called me December 6th. He's dead already. With the
They called you and said?
I said, what is this regarding? She goes, we have a primary for him. I said, really? You're a little too late, sweetheart.
Dr. Foote says Mr. Breen's a perfect example of a veteran who needed an urgent appointment with a primary care doctor and who was instead put on the secret waiting list where he remained hidden.
And if you die waiting for your appointment, you didn't exist.
Correct. They can just remove you from that list, and there's no record that you ever came to the VA and presented for care.
Pretty convenient.
Pretty sad.
CNN has obtained emails showing top management, including Phoenix VA Director Sharon Hellman, knew about the actual wait times, knew about the off-the-books list, and defended its use to her staff, which makes this statement to CNN from Hellman all the more strange. It is disheartening to hear allegations about veterans' care being compromised, the director writes, and we are open to any collaborative discussion that assists in our goal to continually improve patient care. Sam Foote says that response is stunning.
This was all planned, and it was planned by the very highest authorities here in Phoenix.
Correct. This was a plan that involved the PINTAD, which includes the director, the associate director, the assistant director, the chief of nursing, along with the medical chief of staff, in collaboration with the chief of HAS.
Basically, you have medical directors cooking the books.
Correct.
The Phoenix VA's off-the-books waiting list has now gotten attention of the House Veterans Affairs Committee in Washington, whose chairman, Congressman Jeff Miller, has been investigating delays in care at veterans hospitals across the country. In a hearing earlier this month, he learned even the Undersecretary of Health for the VA wasn't being told the truth about the secret list.
Were you made aware of these unofficial lists in any part of your look back?
Mr. Chairman, I was not.
Congress has now ordered all records in Phoenix, secret or not, be preserved. That would include the record of a 71-year-old Navy veteran named Thomas Breen.
Tonight at 360 exclusive, the most...
Let's see. So it's a horrible story. I was with Pauline, who was in charge of the secret wait list, and that's how I knew about the secret wait list when Sally Breen called her to talk to her after she had called her about the primary. So there was just so much unethical behavior and immoral behavior going on. Nobody could understand. And people often ask me, why would leaders let patients linger and die? And all we can say is under ethics, there is something that is called ethical fading. It is what happens when leaders put profit and winning ahead of morals. Thus, they let the ethical aspects fade into the background. Or differently stated, it's where they're looking so intently for something else that they lose sight of their morals and values. So that's kind of the only explanation anyone can give. What we thought was only happening in Phoenix was actually happening all across the country. And what would happen is the directors who had windows of access for care to veterans that were within a 30 or 40-day time frame, or 30 or 15-day time frame, were getting bonuses. So all we could think of was it must have been tied to their performance bonuses. But if you look at this story from USA Today, of the 156 VA hospitals nationwide, 111 ended up being investigated for waits and delays in care. This has obviously tarnished VA's reputation. They're still in the news about it, and it's just kind of a very sad story. And it gets back to personal values, personal morals, personal ethics. How do you do anything like this? And that's why people like me have to become whistleblowers. It's a sad state of affairs, but I believe in serving as the public advocate, and I advocate for our nation's veterans. I believe in honesty, morals, and ethics. You have to speak the truth. And in PR, we adhere to the highest professional standards that we have in our profession. I also believe in dealing with independence, where I had to find objective counsel and hold them accountable for their actions. I was loyal to the public trust. You know, VA is a federal entity with taxpayer dollars. How can we not take care of our nation's veterans? And I believe in dealing with clients, the media, Congress, the patients, our employees fairly, ethically, and honestly. So it was very hard for me to take a stand for ethics. I will tell you that after those stories aired in the press, the Office of Special Counsel took much more interest in my case. The media helped me obtain a settlement because I was on the front page, that's me on the front page of the Washington Post, after the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Eric Shinseki, was forced to resign in the wake of the scandal. And we had Bob McDonald come in as a new secretary. And I learned that God again had me where he needed me to be. I was now almost 2 years into my 30-day investigation in fighting my whistleblower case. And I was able to obtain a settlement through that after the exposure. And there was a desire by the current leadership at the time to change the culture of VA. I'm telling you, that has been a long, hard fought battle. These are the ethical values that I use to help me win my whistleblower case. I've touched on them briefly, but again, they're advocacy, honesty, expertise, independence, loyalty, and fairness. And I will tell you that speaking with the truth saved me, because every time I was asked about what I did, all I had to do was speak the truth, and the truth set me free. I was able to obtain settlement through the Office of Special Counsel. I then worked as a senior communications specialist for VA, and I have since retired from VA, and I am now working on my own business for Paula Pedene and Associates, where we are going to uphold ethical values in all we do. I was able to write a book on my experience, so I plan on sharing my story with others. I was honored when the book concept was selected by Pipeline Media Group as the winner for their competition just last year, and that's what we're looking at doing next. So that's the end of my presentation. Here's information about me. If you want to reach out, there it is. And Levi, I'm open for any questions anyone might have.
All right, awesome. First of all, thank you so much. This was, I mean, so many of us have heard the story. As you know, it was national news. I'm sure it was international news. So thank you for sharing with us what drove you, which is not every single person could stand face that challenge. So thank you. So here are some questions that just came in through the chat, and then I'll unmute mics. I know that earlier we had like a quick sound glitch from someone's mic unmuted, so I stopped all the mics from being unmuted. This is a question that came from the chat from Lou. Why did these bad things happen? Where does money enter it? And is it just bad people, or was there something more sinister?
Well, I think it was people who were doing immoral things. What happened in the VA is directors were able to get large performance bonuses, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, okay? And in order to do that, they had to meet these performance metrics, and one of the metrics was showing that they could get patients into the healthcare system within 14 days for a primary care appointment, 30 days for a specialty care appointment. And, if they couldn't do that, they would put them in this off the books list. As you saw, 111 other facilities were also being investigated. So it was really kind of a lapse in moral judgment. In order to make them look good, they must have shared this information with each other, because how else would everyone know to do this? And some of them took the bait and went for it.
So was the proper solution would have been to hire more doctors, I assume?
The proper solution would have been to not have a secret waiting list anywhere.
Well, no, I mean,
and B, to hire more doctors. And C, that is why Congress keeps giving VA money. But now I think Congress is to the point where we're giving VA too much money. They don't know how to spend it ethically or morally. They're getting so much money, they don't know what to do with it. And I think what we need to do now is audit the money that they are receiving and see where it's going. The biggest fix that we had for the wait time scandal was something called the VA Mission Act. And before I retired, I was able to work on the campaign to actually launch the VA Mission Act, where it was allowing community care and urgent care in the community for patients. Which was great, and it was working well, and we had the networks all set up and everything, but then COVID hit, and guess what was the first thing that VA started putting on pause and putting on hold? Community care access. Yeah. So how much has the culture changed? I don't know that what they're doing right now is the best for our veterans. So we need another team of auditors to come in and look.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So really, it's still ongoing to a degree.
Unfortunately, to some degree, I think so, yes.
Okay, so here's another question from Sheldon. He said, where were our congressmen, senators, and governor?
Well, here's what happened. We were providing them information, but what they were getting was information only from us, from one source. And that was basically me, who was sending information to those members as anonymous, because I was already banished to the basement. So when Sam, after a year, Sam said, Paula, you're right, this is happening. And when he went public and he went on camera, that's when they could really pay more attention to him. The media could not run the story because it was only one source of information. And thankfully for investigative pieces, they still need two sources of information, the initial source and a verified source. So when Congressman Jeff Miller, who was hot on the trail of these people, finally brought it up in a congressional hearing, that's when it broke open. We had Sam as the initial source, Congress as the second source, and they were working with us. Who helped us the most was Congresswoman Ann Kirkpatrick. She was very diligent in her efforts to help us. And then later we had others that jumped on board, Senator John McCain, Senator Blake, and others. They all did jump on board.
Did you find any people that didn't believe it and therefore wouldn't help?
Oh yeah. You know what? I was working at the VA still, and people would say, Paula, those news stories, they're not true, are they? Did you see that story in the Arizona? Did you hear that? And this was before President Trump came in and started talking about fake news. So people weren't even believing the media, which is an issue for the media, because this happened before that, but they would say they're not true. And I would look at them and say, I have talked to patients personally, the families of those who have died. It is true, it is accurate, and everything that Sam is saying is the honest to God truth. You need to believe them.
How did they, and there are some more questions in the chat, but just curious, because for Dr. Foote, what was did it do anything to his career?
Oh, he had to retire from the VA. He did. Because he retired early to blow this thing wide open. Yeah.
Wow. And now he's still retired. He has another.
He's still retired, and he's actually gotten physically fit. He was a little chunky, you might have noticed in the CNN interview, but he plays senior softball, or he was. I don't know if we can do that anymore right now with COVID, and he's doing fine. He flies a plane. He works at the train park, so he has a life outside of VA.
So here's another question. How was the backlog for treatment cleaned up? And I know that you mentioned towards the end how it's been recently, but this is a story from 2014.
Right. So what happened, they had to set up what's called an emergency management system within the hospital, a health emergency incident command center. They had all of the patients. We gave them the list of names of the 1,400 that were on the fake list, and they contacted each of them and saw all of those people individually. Several of them had died, and I suggested to those that I found out about that they file a lawsuit because that was incorrect. So they did do the Incident Command Center. They saw those patients, and then the Mission Act was designed to take care of the rest.
So what year did the bonus start? You had mentioned about.
Oh, the bonuses started. We found out about this kind of a sham scheduling thing. I think it was in 2009 or 2010. And then Sharon Hellman got there in 2012. And you saw the reason that she canceled the VA support of the parade was because healthcare access had to be job one. And we found evidence that she knew about both lists. She knew about what was happening, and she condoned it. So she actually did get fired from VA. She was prosecuted criminally. They did not, unfortunately, prosecute her for the waitlist scandal, but they prosecuted her for illegally accepting bribes from a contractor, and that's how they were able to remove her from federal service, and she is a convicted felon.
Okay, some more questions in the chat, and just so everyone knows, I did release that block on unmuting, so if you do have a question that's not on here. So here's a question from Janet. What do you think about the service that they provide currently? And I know you mentioned they sort of fixed it up by giving community options, but took that back. And just to finish her comment, her 44-year-old son has been going to Phoenix VA for 20 years. It seems like his attention and service when he goes for checkups has improved.
Yes. So I think the thing that we can do only at this point in time is ask the veterans how it is. Unfortunately for me, even though I'm a disabled veteran and I'm eligible for VA healthcare, as a whistleblower, I am concerned about going to the VA for my care because I don't know who's going to hold something about me being a whistleblower against me. I do go for my primary care because I have a primary care provider that I know and I trust, but all my other care is done on the outside. So I think the care has to be looked at in many facets. I do know that VA has a rating system that is on their website, and when you look at the Phoenix VA and compare it, just a few months ago I looked, and the Phoenix VA was number 38 of the top 40 hospitals. So I think that Phoenix and others have a long way to go. Unfortunately, I do believe the new leadership that they have in there is trying very diligently, and I think the staff care. The hardest part for me about this whole experience was I worked hand in hand with staff who want nothing but the best care for the veterans that we serve. And that was the hardest part because something like this not only tarnishes the VA as a whole, but it tarnishes them too. So they're working diligently to get beyond it. And I think there are numerous staff who care. So if a veteran is getting good care, I would say continue to go, look at the quality of care standards, make sure that they're matched up. And if they're not getting care and complaining about it, move them to the outside.
So a follow-up question, I guess, on the bonuses. Number one is, were the administrators in fear of losing their jobs if they didn't get the patient? Like, you know, what was the incentive behind them to not do it right?
Yeah, the only thing that we can think of, and without directly asking them, is to say that ethical fading, where, you know, it was like, oh, I'm going to get a performance award, or they were so focused on this plot that somebody had shared that they could find a way around that part of the performance standards. They have numerous performance standards. There's really too many. There's no way that when a patient comes in, a doctor can look at 300 or 100 performance standards, you know, to make sure that the patient is okay. There's just no way. What we need to do is concentrate on maybe a dozen or so each time, and then keep adding and adding. So who knows? The only thing we can think of from our point of view is that term of ethical fading.
So were any of these administrators that were receiving the bonuses, were any of them fired, or?
Yeah, so numerous that when the IG finally listened to us, went in and did their audit, 111 of the 156 hospitals were investigated. Several were found to have fraudulent lists. Several of those directors were forced to retire or were moved to other positions. Some of them were fired, but they didn't go through and fire, you know, because firing doesn't always lead to cleaning house, is what the mantra was at the time. But I think we did get rid of most of the unethical people. They were caught and they were removed.
And the bonuses are still in place?
I think the bonuses, I'd have to check on that, Levi. I'm not sure, but I do believe that there are certain parameters that lead to performance bonuses. I know that Secretary McDonald froze all bonuses for senior executives for years. He knew. Now, why would he do that? Because he saw that they were using them unethically and were being immoral with their behavior on that. But I believe that since that time, under the new leadership, that the bonuses might be back in place. I could check and find out and let you know.
One more question from the chat, and then I see a number of mics that have been unmuted. Those will be questions as well. Were any of the doctors at the VA involved, or were they of any help?
Yeah, so the doctors at the VA that saw what was going on, again, we had, unfortunately, hundreds of them leave in droves. I mean, for a while there, it was like it was flavor of the day on who your primary care provider would be. I was very sad. Those that could help us did. They saw what was happening. They hated it as much as we did. We had pharmacists, we had nurses, we had doctors, we had physicians assistants, there was issues in urology. Those doctors stepped forward. Once they saw this, they stepped forward, put their careers on the line and reported that. And urology was another scandal that was looked at. And, you know, unfortunately for the VA, that's one of their primary demographics is male veterans, you know, over the age of 60 who might have urological or prostate issues, you know, so that was another bad scandal that that happened at Phoenix. So everybody that was moral and ethical that could help us did. I often tell people the employees split into like 3 groups of people. You had one group of people who they saw me and they were afraid. They were like, oh, she's trouble. I don't know if she's going to get me in trouble. So they would kind of just ignore me or stay away from me. Then you had another group of people that were like, thank you for doing what you did. We're so, you know, we're so glad that somebody finally stood up to this and, you know, what you know, blah, blah, blah. And they were on my side. And then you had another third that were like, oh, well, she's in trouble with the director. So what can I do to help throw her under the bus? So see, all it does is it relates to your own, how you're raised. You know, we can't teach this stuff after the fact. You have to be raised as a young adult with morals and values and ethics. It is okay to tell a child not to lie. It is okay to tell a child not to steal and to have them face consequences if they're doing things behind your back as a parent. That's how you build this culture of morality and ethics, is by teaching them when they're young and grooming them as you go forward and having consequences. Put them in timeout, you know, take away their allowance, make them have some kind of penance. You know, that's the only way they're going to learn. If they get off scot-free, what good does that do? What good does that do? Nothing. So that's just, you got me on my soapbox, sorry.
Now we know what your next book's going to be about, parenting.
Yeah.
All right, Jerry or Phyllis, I'm not sure who has the question, but I know that you guys are.
Yeah. Did the university training programs that use the Phoenix VA take any action when all this came to light?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that we worked with, we had Dr. Bill Finch, who was phenomenal and was one of the leading resident trainers there, and he was helping us. But we had another doctor that was over some of the residency program that was involved in some of this unethical behavior, and unfortunately we were unable to provide anything other than circumstantial evidence. And in these types of investigations, they need hard evidence. So that person is still in their position to this day.
Thank you for your good work.
Ellen, did you have a question?
Yes. Was it mainly new patients who weren't getting to see a doctor in time? how would they decide, you know, like who wasn't getting to see the doctor and who was?
Yeah, unfortunately, Ellen, it was just the luck of the draw. If you were a patient and they had you in a clinic where they could work you in, they would put you in. But if you were so if you were a new patient at the time, we had Saturday clinics and we were getting them in and getting them vested. And then they stopped the Saturday clinics, which was kind of a warning sign to us. And then if you were just a current patient and you'd walk in for an appointment, it depended on if they could work you in or not. And what was happening was the patients would come in, they would ask for an appointment. The staff, unfortunately, was instructed to enter it into the system. And then what they were taught to do was, instead of hitting the enter it into the electronic wait list, there was an option to print. So they printed the patient's name, request, and information. And as soon as they hit print, that is when that patient became part of the secret wait list. So the IG had to come in, go through all the computerized patient record system data entry process, and remove, there's what we call keys in the computer entry system. They had to remove that key to print in order for it to go into the official wait list. So that's what was happening. And my friend Pauline was walking around with the paper lists of at least 1,600 veterans. And she was trying to, one person was assigned to the paper list, one person. And she would cry almost every day, Paula, I couldn't get to him. You know, I called another one that died today.
Lou, you had a question?
Yeah, I would assume, as I look at it from business, this turns into follow the money. I think these people may have been very ethical when they started, and then because of budgets or whatever, they couldn't do the job. And so they said, well, we have to hide this because I'm not going to lose my bonus and I'm not going to get transferred to the southern side of Alaska.
Yeah, right.
And so now you will keep this list. Somebody came up with this bright idea of a list, and now they could hide it. And when it goes on for enough years, but this is follow the money. And now then go back to the budget, because I want to keep hiring people and nobody's listening to me. I need more money. But
no, it wasn't just that though, Lou. They were getting money.
I don't think people decide to not take care of people for any reason except that it hurts their budget. If you don't take care of them, you're not going to get these bonus, and you're not going to get patted on the back, and you're not going to get a promotion. So I think when those things started happening and they couldn't figure out a way to solve the problem, all this nasty stuff started following in. But
yeah, I do think some of it was a money issue, but again, you know, we were at a time where under Secretary Shinseki, VA was seeing record budgets. If you look back on the VA budget for the last 10 years, they have been seeing record budgets. So that's why I say we need to audit. Where is that money going? What are they doing with it?
I would think the big thing they're doing with it is they're taking away their budget, their bonuses.
Yeah, that's part of it right now. So hold on one second.
They had to hide the wrong that they were doing.
We'll be here, Paula.
You know, and then you tell the nurse on the third floor to not turn in those nasty notes, and you tell, and it gets into the organization, and now you start infecting the good people, and now you've got real problems because nobody wants to stand up to make things right.
It's a Jewish saying
to fix it.
It's a Jewish saying. There's a saying, it says, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. When you do a good thing, it causes another good thing. And the saying, the adverse is when you do a bad thing, avera goreret avera, causes another one. So clearly it was contagious. I
There's
guess.
another expression that says no good deed goes unpunished.
Right. She's gonna be right back. I think I heard her
There
doorbell.
we go. Yeah, sorry, there was somebody at the door. I had to let him in.
No
So
worries.
we're having work done on our house, in case you can't tell.
I didn't tell anyone. Judy, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, I'd say that I agree with Lou. There's got to be something inherently wrong with the system that took average people and made them do such evil. Because people who are in that field, they are so committed to the proper health care, etc. So nothing else makes sense to me. Now, my father was in World War II. He said he would never go to a VA hospital or a VA doctor. So there's something that extends all the way back that was wrong with the system. My uncle, who was in the Korean War, was very badly burned, and he loved the VA, but just loved it. Had just terrific things to say about it. So although this was a new problem to you, and it's amazing that you had the fortitude to see it through to the end, I'm not sure it was exactly a new problem.
No, and to Judy's point, there have been scandal after scandal after scandal at the Veterans Affairs. If you look up Veterans Administration scandal or Veterans Affairs scandals, you'll see unfortunately, I think what it gets back to is the moral and ethics of people. That's really what it is. And why anybody thinks it's okay to evade their taxes, to do this, to do that, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? There's just so much, and if you look in our world, there is so much corruption. Look at what's happening. The opioid crisis was, you know, I mean, look at all the things that are happening. Fiat, Volvo, Volkswagen. Why? Is that all a money issue? Is that just about the money?
Yeah.
Or you know?
Money. Everything you mentioned has money at the root of it.
And it's just sad.
That's the problem with the capitalist system. One of the problems is that it's.
But Judy, that's it. I'm not the presenter today, but there's nothing better with the communist and socialist system. So they.
Right, exactly. I think we just need to get back to, you know, when our country was first founded, it was a handshake meant something. Your word meant something. A piece of paper meant something. You know, it meant something. Why doesn't it mean anything now? Why is it okay to sign a document and then lie?
Right, Ethel or Herb, I'm not sure who wanted to ask.
Well, I was going to say that it is money, but they were throwing money into the VA, but where is the money? And why didn't it didn't trickle down to where it needed to be? They were giving bonuses and not giving the doctor, hiring a doctor instead of the bonus, hire the doctor so he can accommodate more patients.
Yep, audit. I say, you know, trust but verify, right? We should trust but verify. That's what we need to do. We need to get back to that, and especially in the federal government, our taxpayer dollars have to be verified. We can't just keep throwing money at the problem and thinking that that's going to fix it when money was part of the problem in the beginning.
In the first place, right?
Right.
Izzy, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, Paula, you mentioned that when they admitted a patient, they filled in the paperwork. And then they hit print. When they hit print, the record was not recorded and it became the paper record. Does that mean that someone fabricated the scheme, had something to do with the IT department, because the IT department had to be involved or something like that? Or did they just find a glitch in the system that they took advantage of.
Yeah. So what would happen is when they would hit print, it would go into the health administration supervisor's office. The print would print there, and then they would gather up those papers and they would bring them to my colleague, Pauline. And then Pauline was required to call all those people. So the leadership, the senior leadership, now we don't know if it was Sharon Hellman or her number 2, Lance Robinson, but Lance had a health administration service background and so did Sharon. So they knew how the system worked. So what they would do by printing that and sending it to the supervisor's office, there was no, you know, it was clean for them. It was clean. It was a clean, exactly. And then what they would do is they would bring them to the clinics. And then one thing we were able to do, so get this is how far this scandal goes, how deep it goes. So we were able, by one of my anonymous letters, to get the Joint Commission, which accredits healthcare organizations nationwide. And we were able to get them to come in to the Phoenix VA to investigate. So what would happen is they would move the paper list to different drawers in all of the clinics, okay? So they would, like, there was only certain people actually that could print, that where the prints would go. So they would put them in a folder and they had certain drawers that they would put them in. So we were able to get the Joint Commission to come in to investigate. So the first drawer that Pauline takes them to, guess what? The papers aren't there. Okay, so somebody had told them that the Joint Commission had arrived. The second clinic she goes to, the same thing happens. The third clinic, somebody forgot to tell them, guess what they found? The paper list in the drawer. And that person was honest and said, oh yeah, this is happening in every clinic. I can tell you everybody that's getting the paper list. But see that, so again, there was two other clinics that knew that they were collecting those paper documents, but yet lied to the Joint Commission when they came.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
It is, and they're afraid for their job because who's telling them to do that? Their supervisor. Now I'm a GS5. I make $24,000 a year. I have a family of 4. This is the only job I can get right now. You know, what are you to do?
So it's disgusting.
The situations they put them in, as well as, yeah.
It's disgusting that people and veterans get reduced to a piece of printed paper and tossed aside.
Yeah, it's sad.
Thank you.
Sheldon, you had a question?
I just had a question. What is the doctor-patient ratio at the Veterans Hospital?
Oh, usually they see about, well, they have a panel, I think it's about 1,300. So they see, they're less than the private sector in how many they see. It's about 8 to 9.
And are they specialists in certain areas?
Oh yeah, they're specialists, and then the specialists have, you know, numerous. Yeah, so there's urology and there's infectious disease and there's pulmonology and yeah, there's all kinds. So I don't know about that mix on the specialty panel, but I do know on the primary care, it's about 1,300.
And is there any obligation by the medical schools that upon graduation, graduates have to put in a term with the VA hospital?
Yes, many of them do. And we do have many residencies with numerous medical schools across the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they make more money in private practice, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. Yeah, you join the VA because the number one reason most of the doctors join us is they want to serve our nation's veterans. We've asked them time and again, and that's what they want to do. They want to help. And then number 2, they're like, okay, I don't have to hire the front staff. I don't have to get this office set up. I don't have to pay the lease. You know, it's a business model. The business model for them is easier. It's already in place. It's a big, beautiful building. They get millions of dollars. They get billions of dollars. You know? So, and the care usually is good. The care is usually good. Like I said, for years, we were a top performing hospital, you know? It's the leadership. We have a dearth of leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any last questions?
Was his problem in many different hospitals in the country?
111 of the 156 were
Have
found to have.
duplicate lists.
Yep, 111.
Money.
Some sort of false waiting list. 111 of the 156. Now I don't know what the percentage is, but that's more than half. It's probably 2/3, right?
Yeah, it's for sure.
2/3.
Yeah.
Paula, thank you so much, and we so appreciate, obviously today, but we appreciate what you did for and do for our veterans. Thank you for standing up. That's not easy. We know that.
And I do have one favor, Levi. My book, if anybody knows a publisher, I need one.
We have actually a bunch of authors that come on. I'll email them.
Okay, thank you.
Is your book ready to be shared?
It's ready to go. I have the synopsis and everything, and I have a Hollywood producer that wants to make it to a movie. So we're kind of working, both angles. So.
All right, I'll email 2 authors that were on here that use different.
Okay, thank you. Because I think more people need to know, and really the story is about ethics and morals, and don't lose sight of it.
Thank you.
The government printing office.
Yeah, I couldn't check with them, right? Yeah.
Thank you again.
Okay.